Hey, good afternoon to you. 406 now News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, top of the hour, 5 o'clock, that'll be Jake Denton joining us from the Heritage Foundation, as Democrats would like to monitor your every utterance on the internet. More details ahead. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. In fact, a number of politicians saying crazy things about social media today. We'll share all of it with you. The craziness from yesterday was that an effort to fast-track an impeachment. Can we really say fast-track at this point? There's nothing fast about this process. Our country's border is completely collapsed and nobody's enforcing it. Republicans in Congress yesterday tried to begin the impeachment proceeding against Alejandro Mayorkas. And they were stymied by, of course, Democrats, but they were also slowed down by 8 Republicans who voted to, instead of bringing this to an impeachment, to instead refer it to committee. Those 8 Republicans include Congressman Darrell Issa, Congresswoman Virginia Foxx, Congressman Ken Buck and Cliff Benz, Mike Turner, Patrick McHenry, Tom McClintock, and John Duarte. Those are the 8 who voted with the Democrats here. They all offer different reasoning. Issa says that he's looking forward to testifying at Mayorkas' impeachment, says he's the worst Homeland Security Secretary ever, he said yesterday. Virginia Foxx also indicated on social media that she thinks that we must impeach Secretary Mayorkas, but we have to do it the right way. That's what she says. And not like the, quote, snap impeachment Democrats concocted against President Trump. Now, from where I'm sitting, this wouldn't be a snap impeachment. It's taken quite a long time for us to even get to this point. Nothing snap about it. For more on this subject, let's bring in Gene Hamilton. He's the Vice President and General Counsel for America First Legal and a former counselor to the Attorney General and the Secretary of DHS under President Trump. Gene, good to have you with us, sir.
Thanks for having me, sir.
This doesn't seem like a snap impeachment. By this point, it feels like the impeachment inquiry has been playing out in public.
Well, it certainly has, and I can understand some of the desire to build a process that I think in their mind has some credibility with the public. But of course, the counter to that is that, as you rightly note, the public sees every single day what's happening down at the southern border. I mean, today, DHS just published numbers for October. And in October, we had 240,000 encounters just at the southwest border. And nationwide, including the people that they're flying here directly from abroad, we had 309,000 total encounters in the month of October. Now, it's a very slight dip from the record-setting month of September, but our borders have been intentionally destroyed and eviscerated, and the case for Mayorkas' impeachment could not be stronger.
Right, and I don't know. Right, I just look at it and go, how many more hearings do we need? The guy says the border's secure. It clearly isn't. Every American city knows that for sure. And it's not just a lack of enforcement at the border. It's also spending U.S. government money on trafficking more people in by way of these NGOs that are taking that federal taxpayer money and then trafficking human beings all across our country. Gene, I mean, it's a political tool, right? We were told before you don't even have to prove a crime. It's a very obvious political tool to impeach someone.
It is absolutely a political tool, and there is no actual crime that's required to impeach a federal official. And look, Vince, I mean, you're absolutely right. What's happening across the country, not just in terms of the sheer numbers, and we can all kind of overlook the numbers from time to time. They're just so momentous and so gargantuan that it's easy to just kind of think, oh, well, it seems like a lot of people. But the long-term costs and the effects on the United States, on our communities everywhere, are significant. They're costly. The people who lose at the end of the day out of all this are the American people, the hardworking American people. There's a lot of people who make money off of the status quo. The status quo profits results in substantial profits for cartels, human smuggling organizations, all of these nonprofits who are, quote unquote, helping these folks. But at the end of the day, the people who hurt the most are the American people.
You know, the House Homeland Security Committee this week released a report indicating that Americans are going to be on the hook for up to $451 billion to pay for illegal immigrants. $451 billion to pay for these illegal immigrants here in the United States in terms of housing and caring for and meeting the various medical needs of and education, welfare benefits. It goes on and on and on. This is just a basic monetary number. And my guess is, Gene Hamilton, is that it's understating the cost to the American public. And that includes through the loss of life that we're seeing each year.
You're absolutely right. I would say that it's a very conservative estimate. And I applaud the House Homeland Committee for getting that report out there and trying to get some numbers out there. But whether it's the cost of human life, whether it's competition for jobs, competition for housing, it's you don't have. It's not as though these 240,000 people who were encountered at the southwest border last month, that all of them were immediately deported from the United States. And in fact, we're not exactly sure just yet how many are still here from that number just last month, but I would be willing to bet that it's a substantial majority. And those people have to go somewhere, and they come here and they start working and they start using medical services and they show up in hospitals. And at the end of the day, Americans who are facing, at this point in time, a very tight housing market, high interest rates, competition for jobs, all kinds of people receding from sectors, whether it's construction, some of the specialized trades, all kinds of other issues. It's because of these demands, and it's because of this endless supply of cheap labor that's coming into the country. And again, the people who are hurt the most at the end of the day are the hardworking American people and the liberals who live in their enclaves, gated communities, who don't have to deal with the effects on everything else, will continue to close their eyes and, assume that this is all just, humanitarian efforts while it's actually hurting real people.
And unfortunately, we've reached a moment now in this saga where the left has made various regions in our country so hellish that even the illegal immigrants who are there don't want to be there anymore. We saw a report out of Chicago this week that Venezuelan families can't find work in Chicago. They hate their living conditions and are planning on moving back to Venezuela. Now, in New York, there was an effort by Mayor Eric Adams earlier this week to put illegals into a new encampment to give them somewhere else to stay. And they say they don't like their living conditions and they want to go back to Midtown now. It's gotten to the point that illegals are unhappy with the accommodations that they have in America.
It's what an indictment of our major cities across this country, who are all happen to be blue cities in the ways that they're administered. I mean, it's a fairly sad state of affairs when a Venezuelan would be more willing to go back to a impoverished country than to stay on the streets of Chicago, which was once one of our proudest American cities.
Yes.
For the longest time, for decades. So look, it's just, Vince, it's just a continued failure of policies. This is all intentional by Biden. This is all intentional. This is all a result of them trying to create pressure by bringing in as many people as they can so they can finally make their campaign for comprehensive immigration reform, air quotes, amnesty, real, by just saying, look, we have too many people here. We now need to pass this comprehensive immigration reform. But of course, we all know what that means. It means amnesty, no enforcement, and we know that it's just going to be a gargantuan cycle that's going to continue and continue and continue until someone says, no, we are going to enforce the laws on the books. We are going to defend our borders, and we are going to protect the integrity of our immigration system.
What happens to a community if everyone in it has a completely different culture, people don't have a shared language, and the social safety net explodes? What happens to communities?
It's a great question, but I have to say that I don't know that we've seen in this country an example of all of those things happening at once yet. But it most certainly will if you continue to diminish the importance of national identity and diminish the importance of citizenship and the idea of being an American. what the modern left has done is they have so diminished the meaning of American citizenship to the point where they want illegals to be able to vote in elections and to have all the same rights and privileges. And so for them, for the modern left, it's, well, let's bring in as many people as we want from all corners of the world. They can speak whatever language they want. It doesn't really matter if you're an American citizen or not, because at the end of the day, the people who benefit from that type of unrest is the left, from discord, from lawlessness. Those are the ones who benefit from it, not the American people. And it's a sad state of affairs.
I noticed that the thing that they did first, though, was they groomed Americans to resent their own country. Isn't it amazing? So it's like we have so many people out there who don't like our own country. That's the product of the left's grooming through the years. And now in our moment of crisis, it feels like sometimes you look around and you're like, where is everybody? How come nobody's standing up to all of this? And it feels, I think a lot of Americans have been beaten down, Gene, and think that, well, America's the bad guy. We kind of deserve this.
Absolutely. You're right. And we need a national restoration of pride in who we are as American citizens and who we are as a country. We can be many people from all over the place, who originated from all over the place, but who unify under one constitution and one set of values as a society in one English language.
Yes.
And we strive to work together to make this a better place for all. But instead, we have the modern left who only cares about balkanization and their never ceasing lurch for power. And all they're going to do is continue to do things that sow discord and create animosity, because that's how they maintain political power.
So this gets to kind of, if I can bring us back to the 8 Republicans who voted against this impeachment yesterday for Alejandro Mayorkas. Again, some of them are arguing that they're not actually voting against impeachment. They would just like a more traditional process for getting there, although impeachment is such a rare occasion in American history anyway. I don't know what the regular process is. But in this saga, it does seem like you don't have the enthusiasm, the intensity, the passion for this issue on Capitol Hill that you get for a lot of other issues. Ukraine is a perfect example. Everybody's out there with their Ukraine flag pins, and they're taking knees for Black Lives Matter, and they're doing all of these performative stunts and spending a lot of money. But then when it comes to our own country's problems, Gene Hamilton, it must frustrate you as much as it frustrates me. I don't see the same passion or enthusiasm. I see that rally today for Israel, and I'm all for it. I think that's wonderful what they're doing. I'd like to see more rallies here on Capitol Hill for Americans to stand up for all of the afflictions that we're dealing with now.
Vince, you're absolutely correct in that we need to have more Americans who are courageous and who are willing to stand up and say the things that need to be said. And that doesn't mean that you have to be mean about it or that you have to, be hateful or anything, but there's nothing hateful about loving your country and about loving the values and the Constitution that make this country great. It's made it the greatest country that's ever been on the face of the earth. And we have to have more people speaking out. And we actually have to go and do things. And we can't just assume that someone else is going to do them. And so, look, I think that over time, especially in the months and years ahead, I think my hope and desire is that there is some kind of a national revival of that type of pride and patriotism in the United States. But it's going to take a sustained effort by a lot of people who are willing to say, no, we don't have to accept unlimited illegal immigration. No, we don't have to have open borders. Yes, we are a sovereign country, and that means something. And until the average American is willing to do that and to say those things, which weren't controversial even 10 years ago, I don't know. We're going to see more of the same.
All right. Gene Hamilton, thank you, sir, as always. Really appreciate your conversation with us today, again, with America First Legal, such a great organization. Thank you, Gene. Good to talk to you. Yeah, coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about the latest effort by Democrats to monitor your speech on social media. They've spent so much time trying to censor you. They also just want to keep an eye on everything you're saying so that the state can intervene if necessary. There was a Republican today on the Fox News channel, and you need to be careful here. There's obviously this tremendous anti-Semitism going on the left right now. And what ends up happening is because you get a bunch of left-wing lunatics expressing god-awful opinions, there's a temptation to say, well, we need to shut down speech. So this is the way that some on the left are reacting. We got to shut them down. We have to monitor what they're saying so we can shut them down. We can censor them. And here's what Nikki Haley had to say today on the Fox News Channel about this subject. She offered that if she were president, that she'd have some rules on how people would be allowed to communicate. Take a listen to this.
When I get into office, the first thing we have to do, social media accounts, social media companies, they have to show America their algorithms. Let us see why they're pushing what they're pushing. The second thing is every person on social media should be verified by their name. That's, first of all, it's a national security threat. When you do that, all of a sudden people have to stand by what they say, and it gets rid of the Russian bots, the Iranian bots, and the Chinese bots. And then you're going to get some civility when people know their name is next to what they say.
Accountability.
And they know their pastor and their family member is going to see it. It's going to help our kids, and it's going to help our country.
Okay, so think about this. Now you hear that, and the first thing you probably think is, okay, sounds reasonable, right? The more that people use their real names, the more that they're forced to actually be held accountable for the things they say. That's all well and good. But you have to think about this from the appropriate perspective, which is, look, speech, even anonymous speech, is protected. People are pointing today to the Libs of TikTok account. It wasn't until the left outed that account and tried to stop her by revealing her identity that we even knew who she was. But she was doing a great public service, wasn't she, with that anonymous account? John Hassan, the great writer, pointing out today that Nikki Haley's idea seems horribly authoritarian, he writes. He said Sam Adams used at least 25 pseudonyms to argue for American liberty. Without them, he would have been imprisoned, most likely hanged, years before the American Revolution took place. There's value to anonymous speech, immense value, and the First Amendment protects that too. Let's keep that in mind as we deal with all of this. More speech, not less. Hey, good afternoon to you. 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, 5 o'clock, we'll talk to Jake Denton at the Heritage Foundation about big tech companies, social media, and the left's desire to both censor and monitor every utterance you make. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Would love to have you with us. The country awaits, well, at least Democrats do, they're super excited, the arrival of Xi Jinping in San Francisco. That's where the city's been cleaned up this week, at least for the moment, to make it appear that San Francisco is as beautiful as it used to be, and not covered in human excrement and needles all the time, as it actually is. You already heard Governor Newsom admit this week that the reason they cleaned up was because of all the big fancy leaders. That was the entire purpose of them cleaning up the city of San Francisco. He's not even hiding it. He just straight up says, yeah, of course, that is the reason why we cleaned up the city. This is Gavin Newsom just a few short days ago.
Folks say, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all those fancy leaders are coming into town. That's true because it's true.
That's true because it's true. That's exactly what we're doing. You caught me. You got me. I would have got away with it too if it weren't for those pesky kids. That's Gavin Newsom this week. So that's crazy. That's true. It's true. Yesterday at the White House, Hillary Vaughn of Fox Business Network asked Jake Sullivan, one of the adult spokesmen for the White House, whether or not the president is embarrassed or has any shame whatsoever about the fact that we are pretending San Francisco is a clean place for Xi Jinping's arrival.
San Francisco has cleaned up their streets ahead of President Biden and President Xi's meeting. They've moved homeless to other parts of the city, cleared tent cities, and trash off the street. Is the president embarrassed that an American city needs to go through a total makeover to be presentable for his out-of-town guests?
The president is incredibly proud of the record that the United States will bring as host to this summit. And I went through some of it today. The strongest economic record.
Notice how he's answering her question precisely. He didn't hesitate at all. He's being very direct in responding to her question. Oh, wait, no, he's not at all.
Of any developed country. the lowest unemployment over a sustained period in half a century, far-reaching investments in innovation,
Hear
in
him pounding the
chips,
podium?
rebuilding America's infrastructure.
Actually, technically, the lectern is what he's pounding. He's pounding it because he's so enthusiastic about the all of the truth that he's sharing.
So actually, Joe Biden thinks he is walking into the summit on the front foot and able to showcase the United States as the premier destination for investment, good job-creating investment here in the United States, all of which will be on display while he is there. And the countries of the world who are coming with a recognition that the United States is in a strong...
Do you remember the question? The question is the president embarrassed that an American city needs to go through a total makeover to be presentable for his out-of-town guests? That was the question. Notice Jake Sullivan not coming anywhere near the answer to this. Do they practice these lies in front of the mirror? Is this the kind of thing? He just pretends like she didn't even ask the question. He just answers a completely different question. Corinne is not capable of this. She's just trips all over herself and then refers the question to another office.
Indeed, for a lot of people, an enviable economic position, and that is going to, I think, sustain him very effectively through the course of the week.
But Governor Gavin Newsom said of the cleanup this. I know folks are saying, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all those fancy leaders are coming to town. That's true. Does President Biden agree it's more important to impress the leader of China than the American people that live in San Francisco and pay taxes every day?
Amen.
First, I completely reject the premise of your question, but secondly,
What?
I don't know what the context of what Governor Newsom said, so I won't respond to it.
Well, then,
last question.
how can you reject the premise of the question if you don't know what the governor said? I completely reject the premise of this question, and I, in fact, don't know any of the details of what you just said. Well, then how can you reject the premise? Doesn't make any sense. So the White House is trying to gloss over all of this, but it is true. They are the only reason San Francisco is getting a makeover at the moment is because Xi Jinping's coming to town. And this happened when Biden visited the border, too, just to remind you. When Biden visited the border, they cleared all of the encampments. All of the trash was picked up. It was the prettiest the border's been in a long time. They gave it a spit shine right over there in one little section of the border. Whatever's right behind him on camera, that was it. Biden goes and visits. Done. And that's it. So if you want your city to be cleaned up, you need to host Joe Biden. That's the answer to this. You need to do some sort of ribbon cutting, invite Biden to come, to be there for the grand opening. You know, Bidenomics is working for our town, right? And you put a big red ribbon out, give him the big ceremonial scissors, have Joe Biden show up. And maybe, just maybe, your city will be cleaned up, at least for an afternoon. That's it. That's it. Now, it's amazing to me. So you've got Xi Jinping arriving, but the American news media is already practicing for his arrival because they have a very authoritarian posture. They're pro-authoritarian when it comes to Joe Biden, and none more so than MSNBC's Morning Joe program, which is truly unbelievable. The drool that is all over Joe Biden's throne from the Morning Joe crew. It's hard to keep up with. Not enough towels. Here's Mika Brzezinski today, upset that anyone dare raise questions about Joe Biden's age.
He's brought the world together, and the thing is, this is the most, I'm going to lose it. Literally, I'm going to lose it. Like, they bring up his age.
Just now, I know she's talking about Joe Biden, but just for the sake of this thought experiment, sub in Kim Jong-un. So she's a North Korean news anchorette, like screaming that nobody respects Kim Jong-un enough.
You bring up his age, he's 80 years old. He makes jokes about his age, and yet he's working on every level, foreign and domestically. And then are you making the argument? Is one making the argument that, oh, he's 80, therefore a voter is going to vote for Donald Trump? Like, that's the choice?
By the way,
I think it's that voters have two time frames with which they can compare events. And they say, hey, I really liked my life a lot better when Trump was president. I think that's what's actually happening. Oh, people are saying he's 80, so we have to vote for Trump? No, we're saying that one of the reasons things suck right now may be due in part to the fact that he's senile. It's not an age question as much as it is specific to him. There are plenty of 80-year-olds who are far more with it than Joe Biden. But Joe Biden's not with it, and he's old. And the country's a lot crappier now than when Trump was president. So, yeah, all of those comparisons are useful when voters are making a decision.
One making the argument that, oh, he's 80, therefore a voter is going to vote for Donald Trump? Like, that's the choice?
By the way, Donald Trump is 77, and
doesn't make any sense.
Even when he was in office, he had executive time where he just sat off the room in the Oval Office, and he would watch cable news around the clock, where Biden is working around the clock on foreign policy.
Sure. Yeah, that's such BS. Doesn't Jen Psaki work at NBC? That's where she also works there, right? Like she has a weekend show. And she's the one who said on television that Biden never wakes up before like 10 o'clock. They can't get him to do things. I didn't say the early morning hours, normal morning hours. They can't get Biden to do things. The earliest they can get him is late morning. And then by 4 o'clock, he's too zonked out to be able to do anything. So you have him for like a 4 or 5 hour window, a small section of time where he might be able to string together a couple of teleprompter scripted questions. But that's it. That's it. And so they're like, and he's working all the time. That man is working harder than anybody I know. It continued this morning on MSNBC. The aptly named Mike Barnacle mounted a tremendous defensive power this morning. Barnacle, who I don't really know this guy. All I know is that he is constantly clinging to power like a barnacle. His name is perfect. It's Mike Barnacle here with Joe and Mika this morning.
I'll tell you what I think. That very few of us and very few in the media really pay enough attention to the weight that this president carries each and every day. You mentioned most of it. Right now, he is carrying 2 twin towers of tyranny. One in Donald Trump.
What is this mixed metaphor that he's about to embark upon? He's carrying twin towers of tyranny, he says. 2 twin towers of tyranny.
Towers of tyranny. One in Donald Trump here domestically, the other Bibi Netanyahu in Israel.
So Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu are the twin towers in this analogy? Does that make sense to you? I think he's trying to say he doesn't like these two men. Mike Barnacle doesn't like Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump. He says they're the equivalent of the twin towers. Now, if we stretch out the analogy to the metaphor here, the twin towers were the ones who were attacked, right? The buildings that were attacked by the terrorists. I don't even know what Mike Barnacle's trying to say.
Carrying 2 twin towers of tyranny. One in Donald Trump here domestically, the other Bibi Netanyahu in Israel, who is perhaps the biggest obstacle to a two-state solution that exists today.
Wait, how is Benjamin Netanyahu the obstacle to the two-state solution? How is that exactly? Because Gaza is a two-state solution. Hamas has its own region. The Palestinians have their own region in Gaza. Gaza, they voted for Hamas. They put Hamas in charge. What has Hamas done with it since the early aughts? Oh, they've just used their entire existence there without Jews living in Gaza to stage terror attacks on Israel the entire time. And Israel's like, hey, you can have your own thing. We'll have our own thing, okay? 2 states, right? Benjamin Netanyahu's been on board with that. So here you have Barnacle saying, no, Benjamin Netanyahu is an impediment to a 2-state solution. How is that exactly? What did Netanyahu do that impeded this idea that Palestinian Arabs can live in peace and on their own just don't mess with Israel? That's the only thing.
So the president has that on his plate. He's got a meeting tomorrow with President Xi, Premier Xi in San Francisco. He's got that on.
Who says Premier Xi? What American says Premier Xi? Exactly.
His plate. But he has every hour of every day something that comes across his desk. None of us can comprehend the weight of the presidency.
Oh my gosh.
Every hour of every day. And as he would tell you if he were here today, it's amazing how every country in the world looks to the United States for help, for solutions, for just almost anything you can think of. Every single day. But you read every newspaper in the country.
Why is Mike Barnacle mounting a more spirited defense of Joe Biden than Jill Biden? Why does he sound like he's married to the guy? Like, nobody knows the stuff that he has to deal with. This man has more on his plate than any American. None of us could handle what he has to handle.
Read every newspaper in the country about President Biden. Within the first 2 paragraphs, they'll point out he's in his 80s. No kidding. He knows how old he is. You couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Someone 45 years of age couldn't do what he does every day, but he does it.
Is there any sense of shame whatsoever? Does he look at himself in the mirror at night and he goes, I can't believe I said that on television. I can't believe that I said that Joe Biden works harder than every single person I've ever known or met. I couldn't do it. You couldn't do it. 45-year-olds couldn't do it. Only that 80-year-old guy could possibly do this very difficult job. Well, he's doing a really crappy job if that's the case. But that is, honestly, one of the most North Korean segments you could possibly imagine. Oh, man, that's what they're doing on the left. So in case you're wondering why the left is going crazy, check out their television networks. It's remarkable. Let's get Hoke in Round Hill in here. Line 4. Hoke, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Barnacle Bill has me confused. Two twin towers of tyranny. Isn't that 4 towers? What are the other 2?
Yeah, that's right. So this is even weirder. Yeah, the 2 twin towers of tyranny. Yeah, they'll make 4 towers. You're exactly right. Yeah. I don't think he really thought this through before he put that on national television today.
Yeah, but you got to look at his audience, including the hosts of the show.
It's crazy. I don't know how you can sit around that table and be like, you know who's super strong? The guy can do 1,000 push-ups. He's one of the most amazing people. He's 18 holes in one in a row. It's Joe Biden. Joe Biden is just phenomenal, Hoke.
It's just crazy. I fear for this country.
Amen. Yeah, me too. Me too. You gotta laugh at these ridiculous people. Thank you, Hoke. Appreciate the call. Here, let's see here. Let me take a call from John in Spotsylvania, line 2. John, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
All right. Hey, Vince. So earlier you guys were talking about illegal immigration and how the leftist wants to bring them all in here so they think they're going to vote for them. I work construction. I've been on construction with legal and illegal immigrants, and they all stand in the same way we do. They have the same Christian and Catholic values. They don't believe in the transgender movement. They don't believe in abortion. I see something like this possibly biting them in the ass because they think they're bringing these people here to vote for them when really they stand where we stand.
Yeah, John, I think there's something to what you're saying, obviously, and you see it firsthand there working with some of these guys. But what you're talking about is Hispanic illegal immigrants, right?
Yeah, mostly the Mexican, the Spanish, yes, Spanish.
One of the things that's changed, John, is that now we have illegals coming from the entire planet across our southern border. You have people coming from every continent except for Antarctica, and I'm sure they're not far behind. I mean, in terms of just illegals pouring into our country with different cultures, different backgrounds, no assimilation. They have no sensible immigration system whatsoever. So that may be right in the case of Hispanics, legal, illegal, or otherwise. But the reality is, especially among legal Hispanic immigrants, they look at this and they go, hey, wait a second. I got here the right way. Don't you come in the wrong way. So I agree with you. Some of this may blow up in their face, but I don't even think they care that much about the long game. I think the short game is to disorient this country as much as possible.
Yes, I agree. I've been speaking to some of my friends that are legal immigrants here, and they bring it when their illegal friends come here and work with them, they speak to them and they tell them, listen, it's not what you think. They're not giving you these benefits or helping you out in some way so you can be a better American. They want you to vote for their values, and they try to tell them to understand and not fall for it.
Yeah. All right. Hey, John, thank you very much for the call. Really appreciate that. A couple of listeners pointing out to me correctly that Biden's always on vacation. He works so much harder than every other American, even people half his age. He's on vacation for 40% of his presidency. Who does that besides Biden? Let's get a phone call in here. Jerry's calling in from Alexandria, line 4. Jerry, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. Yeah, my comment here is this is going to be this upcoming election is going to be a test of whether our enemies finally understand American politics or not. If I was Z, I would be doing everything I could to make Biden look great for this coming year. And I would have all my compadres, North Korea, Iran, Russia, do the same thing. Make him look like a strong guy, no more military confrontation, no more flying balloons over the country, all this kind of stuff. And just make him a real strong guy for a year.
So Xi,
4 years to do it.
I think you're right about that. If given the option, who does he want to become the next president of the United States? The same guy who's president now. Xi Jinping would prefer Biden. Wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of actions by the Communist Party of China to make that happen, up to and including, of course, their control of TikTok, that unbelievable social media network controlled by the Chinese right here in the United States, which is polluting the minds of so many young Americans. More on social media companies, their influence, and the way the left actually wants to censor Americans here in the United States. Jake Denton will join us from Heritage coming up.